Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about those rookie tight ends and what we believe is their best landing spot. Well, with us today is a special guest making his first appearance with Front Office Pros, which is none other than Chris Battistel. Chris works with Fantasy and Frames and Club Fantasy FFL. Chris, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. First time, a long time though. I am a listener of the show. I just caught the JJ Schultz quarterback episode, and I love what you guys were talking about there. I don't know about Caleb Williams on Washington, Steve, but I like the argument.
My oh my. Save this when we go live here. I see how this works, Chris.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, glad to hear that you're a listener of the show.
Yes. Yeah, you guys do great stuff, man. Keep it up.
Hike.
All right, guys. So let's talk about the odds-on best tight end in this class, tight end Brock Bowers. Joe, what's your preferred landing spot for him?
Yeah, kind of odds find as much like we talked about these wide receivers, Steve. I'd like to see Brock Bowers go to the Chargers. We mentioned Keenan Allen getting traded. I got Mike Williams released. We know that Harbaugh likes to utilize the tight ends, but Brock Bowers isn't really a tight end. In my book, he's just a pass catching weapon that can be utilized. Line him up in the slot, they can move him around, and I'd be curious to see how Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers would ultimately move him around and utilize him in this offense.
I love the Chargers landing spot for Bowers, Joe. So does that mean that you think they take him at 5, or do they move back to take?
I'm thinking, yeah. My thoughts was this was primarily if they trade back from 5, miss out on some of the top wide receivers, and then they're able to pick up Bowers, moving maybe down to 10 or something.
Yeah, as much as they need a wide receiver, man, I just can't see Jim Harbaugh picking a wide receiver. It's just not in his fabric of being.
That's true.
I can't. But I like the Bowers spot there for the Chargers, and like you said, elite prospect tight end. The team that drafts him is gonna utilize his assets. They're not gonna bring him in and throw him into a blocking spot and try to make him a blocking tight end. Any team that drafts Brock Bowers is going to utilize Brock Bowers' assets. And for me, a team that I would like to see him on, everyone's talking Jets, Chargers is a great spot, possibly the Titans. But I want to see him on the Saints, man. And as a Saints fan, I don't necessarily like it. Hear me out. As a Saints fan, I don't necessarily like it. I want them to address the trenches. They need to address the trenches. The offensive line or the defensive line is where they should go. But where they are in the draft, I could see them picking Brock Bowers if he does fall there to give him that other offensive weapon. Because let's be honest, it's only Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara there. Juwan Johnson was the tight end one last year. Didn't play that great. If they can bring in a guy like Brock Bowers to be utilized in the middle of the field, I think for fantasy purposes, that is a great landing spot because he's also tied to Derek Carr, who has made tight ends in the past. Jared Cook, Darren Waller. And then if you want to look at Derek Carr's passing depth, 2023, 48% of his passes came within the sticks. Where does Brock Bowers eat? Within the sticks, those intermediate short routes in the middle of the field. That's where Brock Bowers makes his money, and that's where Derek Carr likes to target the field. 2022, 44.6% of his passes came in the middle of the field. 2021, pretty much the same number, 44.6, 44.8% of his passes. It's just a matchup that isn't the sexiest matchup on paper. The New Orleans Saints isn't this prolific offense. They weren't that last year. But getting a player like Brock Bowers where he's that second option for the passing attack, as a fantasy manager, I love it.
Honestly, I could argue in that situation that he might be the number one option. I mean, Olave and Derek Carr, there were many instances last year that they were not on the same page. So I think, based on Carr's history with what he was able to do with Darren Waller, like you had mentioned, really brought him to relevance. I think it can make a lot of sense. So for me, I'm going to roll with you here, Joe. I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers as my preferred landing spot. I think at the end of the day, I think he's landing spot proof. I think no matter where he goes, I feel confident about him. It's well known, like you said, Chris, Jim Harbaugh heavily utilizes the tight end position in his offense. I do think he's the best tight end prospect since Kyle Pitts. I think he's a great in-line blocker. He's a fantastic route runner for the tight end. I know the Chargers have added Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst while also having Donald Parham. So part of me is like, this is kind of a crowded room. But we know that Harbaugh likes to use a lot of tight ends. So I think Bowers would be able to take over right away as the number one target for Justin Herbert, instantly becoming the tight end one going forward, or a tight end one, excuse me. So one quick comment, though, about Bowers. I want to get your guys' thoughts. How good do you think Bowers is? I mean, there's, Kyle Pitts over the past years was this elite prospect taken, within the top 5 picks of the draft. I think he was the 4th pick of the draft when he came out. Do you think that Bowers is maybe even better than Pitts?
Yeah, I think it's, tough to say if he's going to be better than him, but he's definitely an elite prospect. I think he's got a chance depending on where he goes, because that's the thing with Kyle Pitts. Like, nobody denies the athleticism, but the Falcons just haven't been a very good spot for him, especially that quarterback situation. His best, year was his rookie year, but he had Matt Ryan at quarterback. So curious to see kind of what he does with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. But, I do think Bowers is an all-around elite prospect, got the blocking aspect as well as the catching. So really intrigued to see what he's going to do at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think as a prospect, he is a better tight end. Maybe as a wide receiver, Kyle Pitts might have the advantage of him over him in that section of the game. But overall, prospect-wise, as a tight end, I'm going to take Bowers over Pitts right now.
All right, guys, let's go to the next tight end.
What about you, Steve? What's your
thoughts? You know me, Joe. I've always been a Pitts guy.
I know you. I know.
In our tight end premium league, I was trying very hard at that draft to get up into one of the top 3 picks. I felt like I needed to get up there to go get him. I have a top pick in our league, and I'm considering what it would look like to take Bowers, because I think Bowers is an elite tight end. In a tight end premium league, it seems like it would be beneficial. I'm just trying to wonder how good he is. Is he just going to be like, is he Laporta level? Is he Kincaid level? Is he Michael Mayer, who people thought Michael Mayer was this great tight end, and Mayer flopped?
I don't know if Mayer was the tight end prospect that Brock Bowers or even Kyle Pitts was coming out.
No.
Mayer, absolute stud. Same with Laporta. Laporta was my tight end one coming out last season. And the situation is what helped Laporta get to where he was today. If Laporta ended up, say, some team where he's in a crowded room, possibly the tight end 3, or maybe even the tight end 2, does he have the season that he has if they don't utilize him correctly? Brock Bowers isn't going to be that guy. You're bringing in Brock Bowers. You know what you're getting. You know what you're going to use him for, and you're going to use him for that. Like I said, you're not going to bring in Brock Bowers to be a dynamic run blocker or a pass blocker. That's just not who he is. And any team that drafts him, if they do bring him in to be a blocker, that front office isn't going to last long.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that, Chris. So let's go on to the next play here. Tight end Ja'Tavion Sanders from the Texas Longhorns. Joe, what's your preferred landing spot for him?
Yeah, I'm going to choose to have him go to the Cincinnati Bengals. I know that they haven't really utilized the tight end position, but, Tyler Boyd's probably not coming back. T. Higgins still up in the air. They could use some extra weapons, and I feel like part of the reason they haven't really used the tight end position is they haven't had that dynamic, very dynamic athletic guys at the tight end position. I know they bring in Mike Gesicki, but let's face it, he hasn't really been that productive. Wasn't that productive with the Miami Dolphins. Thought he could get an increase in production with the New England Patriots. I really don't think he's going to do much with the Bengals, and I wouldn't be, afraid from a dynasty standpoint if Sanders happens to go there. So I think Sanders could really just step in there and be the tight end one for the Bengals.
Man, I like that fit. I like that Cincinnati Bengals fit, especially if they lose Higgins. And like you said, if they lose Boyd, printing money for Ja'Tavion Sanders. But for me, the big-bodied, willing blocker who struggles a bit with run blocking, so he's not going to be used primarily as that guy in this offense. But give me Jatavian Sanders to the Indianapolis Colts. They miss out on him because the Saints pick him before the Colts do. So they're going to miss out on Brock Bowers, and they're going to be able to draft Jatavian Sanders. Personally, my tight end 3 of the class coming in. And my comp for JT right now, I don't know what your guys comp. My comp for him right now is the Trey McBride ceiling. He's just that guy that's going to be able to do it all on the field. He's going to be able to get downfield. He's going to block. He's going to get in those dirty spots for you. Jatavian Sanders is fast. He's agile. And he's going to be able to do all the things that Anthony Richardson is going to need him to do in that offense as, again, the secondary passing option in that offense behind Michael Pittman. 50% of Anthony Richardson's pass attempts last year came funneled into the middle of the field. And again, if you look at what Jatavian Sanders does best, it's eat in the middle of the field. So another great fit for another team that is hungry for playmakers on that offense to go with their young quarterback. So for me, it's the Colts.
So my best landing spot for Jatavian Sanders is going to be the New York Jets. Currently, the tight end room features Tyler Conklin and Jeremy Ruckert. I think Sanders would instantly become the most athletic tight end in that tight end room. And Chris, you mentioned it as far as his blocking goes. I see Sanders, from what I understand, more of a move tight end. He's not your typical inline tight end. He's going to be a receiving entity when it comes to being in the NFL. And the thing that I was thinking about Aaron Rodgers was I don't know how great he's done with tight ends, other than I'm bringing us back on a time machine to talk about Jermichael Finley. I don't ever believe he was a good blocking tight end either, but obviously had some pretty decent years back in Green Bay. I think Sanders could do the same. So I like that fit for the Jets. I think he actually has an opportunity to get that starting role, whereas depending on where he goes, that could be difficult for him.
I like the Jets fit.
And how are you feeling about the Colts destination there, Steve? I know you're a big Jelani Woods believer.
I am a big Jelani Woods believer, and I will be mentioning the Colts possibly later, so I'll hold my breath.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Jelani Woods, Andrew Ogletree, Mo Alley Cox, Kyle Granson. I mean, it's a
tight end U over there.
Yeah, tight end U-Haul, because they're all going to be shipped out once Jatavian Sanders comes.
That was good. That was good. I like that. All right, so let's talk about tight end Cade Stover from your Ohio State Buckeyes, Chris. Joe, what's your preferred landing spot for him?
Yeah, Steve. Well, you mentioned the New York Jets with the Sanders, so I'm going to say Stover to the Jets, and it's not just because they took Ruckert, who's also from Ohio State, but I just like Cade Stover's ability, his receiving ability, but then he's also a willing blocker, and we know that Jets like to utilize their run game with Breece Hall, and they don't have the best offensive line. They need help protecting Aaron Rodgers, so why not bring on a guy like Cade Stover who can not only block but also help Aaron Rodgers in that passing game as well?
Yep. And for those same exact reasons, I got Cade Stover going to the Bengals. You mentioned Mike Gesicki there. Mike Gesicki was a dynasty buy for me. You could throw a fourth rounder at a team and possibly get Mike Gesicki to come into your competing team, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be utilized in the middle of the field for the Bengals. So for the exact same reasons that you just mentioned, Joe, for Cade Stover going to the Jets, being utilized as a blocker for Joe Burrow, that's why I have Cade Stover going to the Jets. He's explosive, but he lacks that top end speed, and he's only been playing the position for a couple years. He was recruited to OSU as a defensive end. So if you watch him on the field, he kind of at times looks a little lost on where he should really go. But I like him. Strong guy. Any guy that massages cows on a daily basis is going to be a game wrecker for your offense on that line. He's strong. He's going to be what the Bengals need in order to keep Joe Burrow on his feet to get the ball to his high money wide receiver. So give me Cade Stover to the Bengals.
So for me, my preferred landing spot for Stover is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think in this scenario, the only competition Stover would have is Cade Otton. I think Stover could use some time to develop, being that he did convert to the position. He was a converted linebacker, went to become a tight end. I think one of the things that really impressed me about Stover is his ability to break tackles and really face contact head on. I think he's a really solid blocker, and I think the Bucs would give him the opportunity to push for a starting spot eventually.
Yeah, I mean, as a Saints fan, I hate it because I don't want to see Stover two times a year. But like you said, man, it's a great spot there with the Bucs to push Cade Otton.
So going on,
I think it's an interesting spot, Steve.
So going on to our next guy, tight end Theo Johnson out of Penn State. Joe, what's your preferred landing spot for him?
Yeah, I decided to go with the Carolina Panthers for Theo Johnson. A team that just needs some passing weapons on the team. They bring over Deontay Johnson. They have Adam Thielen, but the Panthers really, I feel like, have not just ever had since Greg Olsen has left, they just haven't been able to find that dynamic tight end and get somebody that can utilize the middle of the field. I think they expected Tremble to be that. He's just been a disappointment. So why not go with a guy like Theo Johnson, who's, very athletic. He's got, good burst as well, some decent speed for the tight end position, and he's a big guy. Why not get Bryce Young some help and allow him to throw it over the middle of the field to a good tight end?
Man, another Joe, man, you just been hitting it today, man. Landing spots, but like you had Stover to the Jets. I got Theo Johnson to the Jets for the reasons that you have Theo Johnson to the Panthers and just being that another playmaker for the Jets. They got Garrett Wilson there, and then they got Mike Williams, who they signed in free agency. Maybe not the greatest receiving option, field stretcher, but to be able to get an athlete, good old Canadian boy like Theo Johnson on that team to be able to be used as a pass catching option for Aaron Rodgers, I love the fit. He is going to be utilized heavily in the play action passing game, something that Aaron Rodgers is pretty much the best at. And Theo Johnson using his athletic abilities to just be able to get downfield when Aaron Rodgers does drop back and utilize that play action. I love it. Only Ty Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert, like you mentioned, in front of him. He did have a top 30 visit with the Seattle Seahawks. Joe, I see the Noah Fant jersey in behind you, man, and I'm sorry, but Theo Johnson just might go in there and steal that man's job.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, Chris, I was hoping that the Broncos might have a little reuniting with Noah Fant in the offseason, but it didn't happen.
Oh, man.
Which honestly shocks me to hear that. Joe has come full circle because he used to call him Noah Can't.
He can't block. Even though he played at Iowa, he's the one Iowa tight end who can't block.
Yeah, block.
So my preferred landing spot for Theo Johnson is going to be your New Orleans Saints, Chris. I think Theo Johnson was underutilized at Penn State, but he shows a great deal of athleticism. We saw that at the Combine a few weeks ago. From what I gathered, he's a great pass protector, but he doesn't have the best hands. So he has some opportunity to develop here. Juwan Johnson's going to be a free agent next year. I think Theo Johnson could grow in the role and possibly become a good red zone target for the Saints, who could be looking for those options. I mean, you have Jimmy Grandpa who's out there, making touchdowns. So why can't Theo Johnson?
Hey, no New Orleans Saints slander, all right, Steve?
Actually, Joey Grandpa, Jimmy Grandpa, I think that's a Joe Sheffield original, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's not mine, Steve.
Oh, it's not an original of yours?
It's not my original, no.
Oh, okay.
I throw you under the bus, Joe. What's going on here?
Yeah, no, but it's not my original, Steve. I got to give the fantasy footballer some credit on that one.
Oh, okay. But you definitely have said it in the past.
I have said it. It's just not an original, so I got to give credit where the credit is due.
Well, I don't want to hear it again, all right?
All right, fair enough. Well, let's talk about one of your favorite tight ends in this class, Joe. Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. Where would you like to see him go, Joe?
Well, no surprise, Steve. He said he's one of my favorites, and I'd like to see him on the Denver Broncos.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, listen, Sean Payton likes blocking tight ends and capable of blocking guys. that's why they continue to, keep Adam Troutman around. They tried it with, Chris Manhertz on the roster, but they just need a young tight end who can actually block. They have Greg Dulcich. He hasn't been able to stay on the field, but he's more of that dynamic pass catcher. He's not even meant for his blocking either. So, and when the Broncos went on that win streak, it was because they got that run game going and then kind of stopped and the losses came. So if they can get a guy like Ben Sinnott who can help bring that run game along and keep that going for the young quarterback or whatever quarterback they decide that's going to be there this year. But then also, he's a playmaker in the passing game as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's a tough guy, physical runner after the catch. And I like everything about him.
What's wrong with Troutman?
Yeah, he's not like Troutman's just okay. And Chris knows from the, he played with the Saints. Like he's a very good blocker, but like he doesn't give you much juice like when he catches it, like and then he plays like after the catch. And that's kind of, I just love the physicality that Sinnott brings and just, watch his tape. He's stiff arm guys. He's running people over. That's my type of guy.
Yep. I love it. I love the Ben Sinnott love. My tight end too of the rookie class.
Oh boy.
From time is Ben Sinnott, and my preferred landing spot is the Los Angeles Chargers, which might hamper his value a little bit because he might be overused as a blocker in that system. But anywhere where he's going to be the possible first target on a team that is hungry for pass catching options like the Los Angeles Chargers are, I don't hate it. He's not going to be asked to be that, down the field separator, which he isn't. We've seen at K-State 21% target share. And let's not forget who the OC is in Los Angeles. It's Greg Roman. And we've seen these Greg Roman systems utilize and capitalize the tight ends. And on the other side of that, as a cheap, pivot to another team that I might see, I'd love to see Ben Sinnott land on, and that's the Washington Commanders, man. But obviously the Chargers is the first spot for me that I would love to see him go to. But if I had to pick a second spot, honorary mention, it's the Washington Commanders. The new GM there, Adam Peters, is the guy that drafted George Kittle and brought him in to the San Francisco 49ers, and he loves Ben Sinnott. So he's got the eye for the talent based on what he's done in the past. And for me, Ben Sinnott, I'm not saying he is, but he can be that Sam Laporta type of prospect. Not the most explosive guy, but a guy that's going to get into the soft spots, into the zone. He's going to be willing to a block, which is going to equal snaps. And the more that your tight end is on the field, the better chance he has to produce fantasy points. And on a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, whose wide receiver one is Josh Palmer, give me the Ben Sinnott to the Chargers all day.
So for me, my preferred landing spot is going to be Ben Sinnott going to the Washington Commanders. Must have been reading my notes here, Chris. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Adam Peters drafted George Kittle back in the day. He's a very good. He's a very good blocking tight end, and really has shown it. Became a good receiving entity. So I think Ben Sinnott could follow the path. But in all seriousness, I think that Sinnott's is a do everything guy, but nothing flashy. With Logan Thomas gone, 78 targets are now vacant. The Commanders brought in Zach Ertz, but he's a Band-Aid solution with him. He's an older guy. He's his time is about done here in the NFL. He's only got 1 year contract with the Commanders. I think that's a great blocker, so I think he may be better than Ertz at that for this point in his career. And then once Ertz leaves, I think Sinnott would have that opportunity to step up in that starting role. And that's what I'm looking at for these tight ends, that they could possibly blossom, because a lot of times, last year was an anomaly, right? This whole, and I'm curious where you stand on this. This might be a little tangent here, but I was trying to tell Joe last year, like, well, rookie tight ends, the first, no rookie tight end has ever done well in fantasy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's a generational class. You got to throw that out the window. You've got Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta. You got to throw it out the window. So, but a lot of times is those rookie tight ends, they're kind of, those tight ends in general, I should say, are late bloomers. So I mean, where do you stand on that? You were looking in hindsight here. Were you with me on that? Were you targeting these guys, or were you thinking that, oh no, they're in the rookie, they're not going to perform that well right away?
Yeah, I had no problem targeting the tight ends early. I wasn't a proponent of taking Dalton Kincaid like as early as the 6th or 7th in the first round of Superflex drafts, like his ADP was telling us early in the rookie draft results there. But I mean, halfway through the season, he was living up to that draft stock. He became one of the focal points in that offense. And now that Diggs is gone, Gabriel Davis is gone, albeit they're probably bringing in a wide receiver in the draft or possibly two. I mean, Dalton Kincaid as a 6th, 7th, or 8th round rookie pick, I don't hate it. And then I had no qualms picking Michael Mayer or Sam Laporta there in the second round, early second round, mid second round of rookie drafts last season. So for me, especially in tight end premium, man, if those guys were there, I'm jumping up and grabbing them.
Yeah, I think the Sinnott is going to definitely be a guy who's under the radar. So if you haven't heard of him yet, make sure you go check him out. I think he could get drafted a lot higher than what people expect as well, which is always telling what these GMs end up doing. So our last guy, guys, is tight end Jaheim Bell from Florida State. Joe, what's your preferred landing spot for him?
Yeah, I decided to go with the Houston Texans for Jaheim Bell. That's because I kind of view him more as the H-back type, and, you know, their offensive coordinator came over from the San Francisco 49ers, who like to use fullbacks. They got, you know, obviously Kyle Juszczyk, who they send out on routes. So I kind of like Jaheim Bell to the Houston Texans, see how they could potentially utilize him. Kind of saw, you know, they brought in Andrew Beck last year, who got some ran some routes and got some opportunities to catch passes. So I think he's only got maybe 1 year left on that deal. So why not bring in a guy like Jaheim Bell, who will give you a little bit more from the athleticism standpoint, you know, as well.
Yeah. I like that spot. Fantasy purposes, I don't know how it's going to calculate fantasy points with the amount of people that they have there. But offensively wise, I dig the scheme that he would land in going to the Texans. For me, I would love Jaheim Bell landing in Detroit to play tight end 2 to Sam Laporta's tight end 1. He is just like you talked about. He's an athlete at the end of the day. He had the 3rd highest 40 time out of tight ends, the 3rd highest broad jump, willing blocker who thrives in the run block game. So even better news for Jahmyr Gibbs owners. And if you're thriving in the run block game, you're going to be on the field. If you're a willing blocker, especially as a tight end, you're going to get playing time. My comp for him right now is a tad bit slower on the top end. Chigo Kwanko, their 10-yard splits are pretty much the same. So they're just as explosive. And Jim Nagy, the coordinator for the Senior Bowl, came out and said, look, this guy might have a tight end beside his name, but he is positionless. You can use this guy all over the field, utilize him in the pass game, line him up out in the slot, bring him into the backfield like South Carolina did. We've seen him be utilized as a ball carrier, lined up in the backfield behind the line of scrimmage. So very versatile guy. But again, like Joe mentioned, he's going to have to end up in a situation that's going to utilize his assets, utilize his speed, utilize his route running. If he goes somewhere and just ends up as a guy on a team, it's not going to bode well for Jaheim Bell. But if a team sees what he can be on the field and they bring him in, the Detroit Lions in that Ben Johnson system just screams fantasy value. And honorable mention, Joe mentioned that they're the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, for me, I think you would have been better off going with the 49ers, Joe. You might want to, take another crack at it.
Why do you say that?
I like the Texans pick.
Oh no, you don't have to give him credit there when there's no credit that's deserving of this. You've got Stephon Diggs, you've got Nico Collins, you got Tank Dell, you got Dalton Schultz, you got Joe Mixon, and you think you would want him on the Texans?
Hey, why not, man? I mean, you saw it. Who knows? Like, if Tank Dell gets hurt again, they're going to need somebody else to step up there. And I know
that's an if.
Right. I mean, Schultz had his moments, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, Jaheim Bell brings more, from an athletic standpoint and everything than Dalton Schultz even.
Yeah.
After they signed into a multi-year contract.
As wild as it is, like the Texans are in a spot to draft for luxury. They can take a guy like Jaheim Bell that they may not need and just bring him into that backfield, line him up out wide, and just be another pass catching ass.
Yeah, but like we already have that with Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan's basically a similar guy, and they don't know how to use Brevin Jordan. So what are they going to do with Jaheim Bell? You've been waiting for Brevin Jordan to wake up and be something for a long time. You just want Brevin Jordan 2.0 on the Houston Texans?
Well, 2.0 is always the better version, right?
Absolutely. But I mean, maybe just Brevin Jordan isn't going to be what we all wanted him to be, but maybe Jaheim Bell could be that.
Oh boy. Okay.
Well, I can't wait to hear your Lenny's plan.
Now Joe's ready. He's got to wind up. He's ready to go. My preferred landing spot for Jaheim Bell is the Indianapolis Colts. Bell's not an inline tight end. He's more of a flex tight end. We've talked about it, Joe. I agree with you. I don't disagree with the H-back thought with him. I think for me, for his fantasy value, he is very landing spot dependent. I think he needs to go to a team that has an offensive mastermind that can be creative with his usage. If he goes somewhere that doesn't have a creative offensive coordinator, this guy's going to flounder because they're just not going to know how to use him. Exactly. So why I like the Colts is Steichen has shown the ability of featuring multiple tight ends. We've already seen Kylan Granson, have a solid year last season, and he's kind of a similar mold to Jaheim Bell, although I think Bell is better. So I think if Bell were to go to Colts, there's no bona fide starter there. We talked about it. It's tight end U-Haul. So I think he has the opportunity to possibly make a difference. The team I really wanted him to go to was the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I just couldn't because they already have Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. But if I had to comp him to anybody, it would be Jonnu Smith.
Yeah.
And Arthur Smith knew how to use Jonnu Smith. He's the one who made him relevant. When you saw Jonnu Smith in New England, Bill Belichick and that team didn't know how to use him. Then he went back to Atlanta. He became relevant again. We'll see what he does in Miami, but Arthur Smith knew how to use that type of tight end. And to me, that comp just makes so much sense.
Yeah, I had Pittsburgh written down on my notes here, and I was just like, I don't want to talk about Arthur Smith. They got Freiermuth there, they got Darnell Washington there. Michael Pruitt followed Arthur Smith from Titans to Atlanta. Yeah. Now he's followed him to Pittsburgh. I do not want to give Arthur Smith any flowers. I do not want to talk about Arthur Smith. So that's why I was just like, I agree with the Jonnu Smith comp too. I have that down here as well, but I'm just like, I cannot talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do not want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam. I am.
That's right. That's right. All right, Joe, hit me with it. Go ahead.
All right, Steve. Well, I think you should have stayed with your Steelers comp because at least there's only two guys, that are ahead of them. When you talked about Brevin Jordan and Dalton Schultz being ahead of Jaheim Bell and the Texans, but then you stuck them to the AFC South team that has a long list of tight ends that they don't even know how to utilize, and that was your landing spot.
Well, because there's no bona fide starter there. He's gonna, regardless, he's gonna have to compete to get a starting job. And in my mind, I'd rather have him go somewhere that there's an offensive coach that could know how to use him, and on top of it, there's no starter that he has to get in his way. If he's in Detroit, no offense, he's a tight end too, and I don't even know how relevant he is as a starter. Unless
I don't know what he's going to be as a tight end. Well, he can't be a tight end one in my eyes.
Right? Yeah.
He can't be.
But we want him. But we want him to be one. That's the thing. This is it. This is the dream. What does it look like for Jaheim Bell to be a tight end one in this league? It's a fetch. It's far fetched. Yeah. But we're trying. We're trying to figure it out.
We're trying. That's what we're doing.
So, Steve, you can keep dreaming for Jaheim Bell to be that tight end one. But
boy. Well, that does it for our best tight end landing spots, those rookies. We'll see where they end up going. Well, Chris, thanks so much for joining the show today. Where can others find your great work?
Thanks for having me, Steve and Joe, man. Appreciate it chopping it up with you guys. Excellent stuff as always. You can find me at FFChrisB on Twitter every Wednesday night with Rhett and Drew on Fourth and Frames at 9 p.m. This week we got Dave Kluge on talking about second-year breakouts. Every Monday night, or every second Monday night, you can find me with my guy Mike. We're talking about college fantasy on the One Foot Down podcast. And then every Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, you can find me on the Club Fantasy Football YouTube channel on Mocking with the Stars with my guy Gator J, where we got a rotation of somebody coming in. We're gonna have to get you guys on there. Coming in every Monday night, and we're running a mock 1 QB rookie dynasty startup. We do it all, man. So that's where you can find me, brother.
Awesome. Well, go ahead and make sure you check out all of what this Chris said and follow him on Twitter as well. He's a great follow, so we definitely recommend that, and a friend of the show, so we appreciate him. Coming up in our next episode, we've got another Fantasy and Frames fellow over there. Jorge Edwards is coming on to talk some IDP landing spots. We're looking forward to that. And if you haven't done so already, check out our quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers, because we know that landing spots do matter. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.